The trading station known as Haven's Reach floated in silence against the stars, a place where hundreds of different species crossed paths. Its long corridors were filled with bright lights, colorful banners, and the constant hum of machines. Merchants shouted about rare crystals, engineers bartered for spare parts, and travelers hurried to catch the next ship heading toward unknown worlds. It was busy, loud, and alive. In one of the quieter sections, far from the main markets, a small figure clutched the hand of her mother. The mother was tall, her skin a soft shade of silver blue, her eyes glowing faintly as she glanced around with worry. Her daughter, no older than 5 in human years, hid her face against her mother's side. They looked out of place, too nervous for such a public space. A group of enforcers appeared at the end of the corridor. Their heavy boots clanged on the metal floor, and their dark armor reflected the station lights. Each of them carried a weapon on their belt, and their presence made the other travelers step aside quickly. They were not station guards. They were debt collectors, the kind who worked for powerful syndicates that cared nothing for fairness. The mother froze when she saw them. She whispered something to her daughter, then pulled the child behind her. But the enforcers had already noticed. "There she is," one of them said with a grin. "You thought you could hide." The mother's lips trembled. She raised her hand slightly, not in anger, but in surrender. "Please," she begged, her voice shaking. "Take me instead. I owe the debt, not her. She is only 5. She does not understand. She has done nothing." Her words echoed down the corridor, and a few passers-by slowed their steps. But most quickly turned away. No one wanted to stand between the syndicate and its claim. To challenge them meant danger, and the people of the station had learned long ago to look the other way. Near a repair stall, a human technician named Daniel was tightening the bolts on a broken drone. He heard the voice of the alien mother carry through the corridor. He looked up, curious at first, then concerned when he saw her kneeling to shield her child. Daniel was used to strange sights in Haven's Reach. He had lived there for years, fixing machines and ships for anyone who could pay. But something about the woman's words struck him harder than expected. "She's only 5. The sound of it stirred memories of his younger sister back on Earth, memories of protecting her from trouble when they were children. The enforcers moved closer. One leaned down and sneered at the little girl. "The contract is clear. A life for a life. The debt must be paid, and the child is worth more than you." The mother's shoulders shook. She reached out as if to push them away, but fear held her back. Still, her voice did not break. "Please, I beg you. Take me. Let her live." The little girl pressed her small face into her mother's side. Her hands clutched tightly at her mother's clothes, too scared to speak, but tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He glanced around, expecting someone else to step forward. Surely one of the guards, or one of the merchants, or even a passing captain would intervene. But the corridor was filled with silence and lowered eyes. No one wanted to interfere. He set down his wrench. His hands trembled, not from fear of the enforcers, but from the weight of the decision before him. Humans on Haven's Reach were few, and most kept to themselves. It was easier to stay unnoticed. But the words "she's only 5" echoed again in his head, louder this time, impossible to ignore. Daniel rose to his feet. The enforcers had not yet noticed him. He could still turn away, pretend this had nothing to do with him. But when he saw the mother wrap both arms around her child, as if ready to face the impossible for her sake, Daniel's choice became clear. He stepped forward into the corridor, his boots clicking against the metal floor. The sound made the enforcers pause and glance his way. Daniel felt their eyes on him, sharp and mocking, but he kept walking until he stood between them and the frightened mother. He did not speak yet. His heart pounded, and his palms were damp. But he lifted his chin and met their stares with steady eyes. Somewhere deep inside him, he already knew there would be no turning back. The encounter had begun. The corridor of Haven's Reach grew tense, as if the air itself held its breath. Daniel stood firm between the enforcers and the alien mother. His stance was steady, but inside, his thoughts raced. He was only a technician, not a soldier, not a guard. He had no weapon on his hip, only a few tools hanging from his belt. Yet the sight of the mother holding her daughter as though the world might tear them apart was enough to keep him rooted where he stood. The enforcers exchanged glances. One of them, taller than the rest, stepped forward with a slow smirk. "And who are you, human? This is no business of yours. Move aside, unless you want trouble." His voice was calm, but his tone carried the edge of a threat. Daniel's throat felt dry, but he forced his voice to remain steady. "She asked you to take her instead. You heard her. The child doesn't belong in this." The leader laughed, the sound echoing coldly down the metal hallway. "You think we care what she wants? A contract was made, and the child pays the debt. It is simple." Daniel clenched his jaw. His heart told him to keep speaking, even as fear pressed down on him. Simple does not mean right. She is only a child. The little girl peeked out from behind her mother's arm, her wide eyes focused on Daniel. For a moment, the station seemed to fall silent, her gaze a fragile reminder of what was at stake. The mother, still holding her daughter close, whispered softly, "Please, human, do not risk yourself." Daniel glanced at her. Her silver blue face was pale with fear, but her voice carried strength, the strength of a mother willing to give everything for her child. He gave her a small nod, as if to say he understood, but he did not step aside. The enforcer leader sighed with mock patience. "Humans," he said, shaking his head. "Always trying to play the hero. Do you even understand the law here? This child is property of the debt collector now. If you interfere, you stand against the syndicate." Daniel did not flinch. "Then let it be clear. I stand against you. Because if she is under my protection, then she is not yours to take." The enforcers chuckled. One of them muttered something in their language, words that sounded cruel and dismissive. The leader leaned closer to Daniel. "And who made you her protector?" Daniel's reply came without hesitation. "I did." A ripple of surprise crossed the alien mother's face. She had never seen a human before that day, yet this one had stepped forward without hesitation. Her daughter tugged gently at her sleeve, whispering in a small voice, "Mama, is he helping us?" The mother could not answer, but tears filled her eyes as she watched the human stand firm. The enforcers were less moved. Their leader snarled, "Enough games. Step aside, or we drag you away with them." Daniel's mind raced. He had no weapon, no backup. But what he had was something else, an instinct to act when no one else would. He lifted his wrist slightly, tapping a code into his console. A hidden signal pulsed out through the station's systems, a call for help to the nearest human patrol ship. It was risky, but he could not rely on silence any longer. The leader of the enforcers did not notice the motion. Instead, he gestured sharply to his men. "Move the human if he resists." The girl is ours. Daniel spread his arms slightly, placing himself more firmly between them and the mother. You'll have to go through me. The corridor was filled with the sound of boots shifting and weapons clinking. A few nearby travelers lingered at a distance, watching from the shadows, but none dared to come closer. To them, this was a hopeless act. To challenge the syndicate was to invite ruin. But to Daniel, this was no longer about rules or contracts. It was about a promise he had silently made the moment he saw the girl's tear-streaked face. The enforcers stepped forward, their tall forms casting long shadows over him. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears, yet he stood as still as the station's steel walls. Behind him, the alien mother whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Why are you doing this?" Daniel did not turn, but his answer was firm. Because no child should be left alone. Not while I can stop it. The little girl's hand tightened around her mother's clothes. She whispered again, but this time her voice was filled with a small spark of hope. "Mama, he will help us." And for the first time since the enforcers arrived, the mother allowed herself to believe it might be true. The plea had been heard. The air in the corridor felt heavy, as if the station itself was waiting to see what would happen next. Daniel stood between the enforcers and the alien mother, his shoulders squared, his hands clenched at his sides. He could feel their eyes on him, cold and mocking, but he did not move. The decision had already been made. He would not step aside. The leader of the enforcers narrowed his eyes. "You are making a mistake, human. Do you think your words carry weight here? Do you think this child is under your protection just because you say so?" Daniel met his stare without flinching. "Yes. That's exactly what I think." The other enforcers laughed, their voices harsh and cruel. One of them tapped his weapon lightly against his leg. "You hear that? The human thinks he can claim the child. He has no idea what he's doing." But the leader did not laugh. His gaze lingered on Daniel, studying him carefully. "Why risk yourself for a stranger? This woman and her child are nothing to you. Walk away, and no harm comes to you." Daniel's heart pounded. He could feel the weight of fear pressing against him, whispering that the leader was right. He could still walk away. He could go back to his workshop, finish repairing the drone, and forget this ever happened. But then he glanced over his shoulder. The mother was crouched low, shielding her daughter with her body. Her eyes were wide, shining with both fear and a faint spark of hope. The little girl peeked out, staring at him with innocent trust. She believed he would keep standing there. She believed he would not let them take her. Daniel turned back to the enforcers. "Because it's the right thing to do. That's why." The leader tilted his head, almost curious. "Right and wrong are weak ideas. Survival is what matters. Power is what matters. You are fragile, human. You have neither." Daniel took a deep breath, then spoke clearly so that everyone in the corridor could hear. "I don't need power. I just need to be the wall that stands between her and you. And I will be." A murmur spread through the few onlookers who had not yet fled the scene. Most kept their distance, but some watched with surprise. It was rare to see anyone stand against the syndicate, rarer still for a human to do it. The leader's lips curled into a thin smile. "Then you leave me no choice." He gestured sharply, and two of the enforcers stepped forward. Daniel's pulse quickened. He was outmatched in strength, and he knew it. But he also knew something else. Humans had a reputation for cleverness, for finding ways to survive when logic said they should fail. He shifted slightly, placing his hand near his tool belt, where a small welding torch and a portable scanner hung. They were not weapons, but they were tools, and tools could be used in unexpected ways. The enforcers loomed closer. Daniel's voice rang out before they reached him. "You touch her, and you will answer to more than just me. That girl is under human protection now. And if you know anything about humans, you know what that means." The words were bold, perhaps reckless. But they carried weight. The galaxy remembered stories of human defiance, how small groups of humans had once stood against far stronger empires, how they had turned battles with courage and cunning. The enforcers paused, uncertain for just a moment. The leader frowned. "You bluff." Daniel allowed himself a thin smile. "Try me." Behind him, the alien mother stared in disbelief. She had expected the human to flee once the danger grew real. Instead, he was drawing a line that none of them had expected. Her daughter tugged gently at her arm, whispering again, "Mama, he's not afraid." The mother's throat tightened. She knew he was afraid. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the quickness of his breathing. But she also knew something greater held him there, stronger than fear. The corridor fell silent once more, the tension growing thick. The enforcers exchanged glances, weighing the risk. Was this human truly backed by others? Was he foolish enough to stand alone? Or was he cunning enough to have a plan? Daniel waited, every muscle taut, his mind focused on the only choice he could make. Walk away, and the child would be lost. Stand firm, and maybe, just maybe, hope would find them. And so he stood, a single human facing the shadows of power, choosing not to yield. The human choice had been made. The corridor felt like a stage, with Daniel and the enforcers at the center while scattered onlookers watched from the edges. Every sound seemed sharper: the faint hum of the station's power grid, the hiss of a vent, the soft whimper of the little girl clutching her mother's clothes. Daniel could feel the weight of 100 unseen eyes, waiting to see if he would break. The leader of the enforcers folded his arms. "You speak of protection, human, but words mean nothing without strength. You have none. You stand alone." Daniel held his ground. His heart beat fast, but he forced his voice to stay calm. "I'm not alone. Not anymore." His wrist console blinked faintly under his sleeve, the silent distress signal still active. He prayed the human patrol ship nearby would receive it and respond before things turned worse. The leader tilted his head, studying Daniel as though trying to decide if he was lying. His men shifted impatiently, ready to act. The mother hugged her daughter tighter, her silver blue eyes wide with both fear and hope. She had seen others challenge the syndicate before, and she had seen them fall. Yet something in the human stance made her believe this might be different. Daniel raised his voice, addressing not just the enforcers but also the small crowd gathered beyond. "You all know what happens if they take her. You all know the kind of lives stolen by these debts. Look at her, she's only a child. Does any law, any code, say this is right?" The words stirred the onlookers. A few exchanged uneasy glances. Others looked away, unwilling to meet his eyes. Most had lived too long under the shadow of the syndicate. They wanted to believe, but they feared the cost of standing beside him. The leader growled. "Enough. We waste time. Take the girl." Two enforcers stepped forward. Daniel's hand slid to his belt, fingers brushing against the small welding torch. His mind raced with possible moves, none of them good, but all better than doing nothing. Just then, the corridor lights flickered. A hum vibrated through the walls as the station's systems shifted under a new command. Daniel had timed it carefully. While he spoke, his console had been hacking into the local controls, sending false signals and looping commands. Now, the corridor lights dimmed, the gravity stabilizers wavered, and the floor shuddered as if the station itself resisted the enforcers. The sudden change made the enforcers pause. One stumbled slightly as the floor tilted under him. Another swore in his native tongue. The leader glared at Daniel. "You dare tamper with the station?" Daniel allowed himself a small, steady smile. "I'm a technician. Fixing and breaking things is what I do best." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the leader's face. He had expected resistance, perhaps even a short fight, but he had not expected cleverness. The mother looked at Daniel in awe. She whispered to her daughter, "Do you see? He does not fight with strength. He fights with his mind." The little girl nodded, eyes wide, her fear softening into wonder. The leader raised his hand to signal his men, but the corridor doors at the far end suddenly hissed open. A group of travelers, drawn by the noise, stepped closer. They did not interfere, but their presence added more eyes, more witnesses. The syndicate thrived in shadows, in quiet corners where no one dared speak. But now, the crowd was growing. Daniel saw the hesitation in the leader's stance and pressed the advantage. "You could try to take her now, in front of everyone. Or you could walk away before this becomes something bigger than you can control." The leader snarled, but he did not move immediately. His men shifted, clearly unsettled by the crowd and the failing systems around them. The longer they waited, the greater the chance that someone, perhaps the station authorities, perhaps the humans, would intervene. The corridor lights flickered again, casting long shadows. The little girl clutched her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mama, maybe they will stop." The mother placed her hand gently over her daughter's and whispered back, "Maybe." Her gaze lifted to Daniel. Gratitude filled her eyes, though she knew the standoff was not yet over. Daniel stood tall, his back straight, his eyes locked on the leader. He knew he was walking a dangerous line, bluffing with nothing but his courage, his tools, and a hope that help was on its way. Yet he also knew one thing with certainty: he would not take a single step backward. The corridor was silent again, the moment balanced on the edge of decision. The enforcers, the mother, the child, the onlookers all waited to see what choice the leader of the syndicate's men would make. The standoff had reached its peak. The corridor's silence broke when the leader of the enforcers gave a sharp command. "Enough waiting. Take them now." Two armored enforcers surged forward. Their heavy steps echoed against the metal floor as they reached for Daniel. The crowd gasped but stayed rooted in place, unwilling to interfere. The alien mother tightened her grip on her daughter, pulling her close as if her arms alone could shield her from everything. Daniel's pulse hammered in his chest. He knew this moment would come. His tools were not weapons, but they were all he had. As the first enforcer lunged, Daniel activated the welding torch from his belt. A bright spark hissed into the air, forcing the alien to flinch and shield his eyes. With a quick step, Daniel swung the torch close enough to scorch the edge of the enforcer's armor. It was not enough to wound, but it was enough to push him back. The second enforcer came at him from the side. Daniel ducked low, rolling against the wall as the alien's arm slammed into the space where his head had been. Pain shot through Daniel's shoulder, but he ignored it, scrambling to his feet. His scanner beeped faintly at his hip. He activated it, flooding the corridor with a burst of interference that disrupted the enforcer's visors. For a moment, the armored figures staggered, their helmet displays flickering. Daniel knew he had only bought seconds, but seconds could change everything. The leader's face twisted with fury. Stop playing with him. End this. Another enforcer raised his weapon. The mother gasped, shielding her child with her body. Daniel's chest burned with fear, but he stepped forward anyway, blocking the line of sight. You'll have to go through me first. The weapon hummed with dangerous energy, but the enforcer hesitated. Shooting a human openly in a crowded corridor would bring questions the syndicate did not want. The leader cursed under his breath and waved his hand. Fine. Take him down quietly. Two more enforcers moved in. Daniel fought to keep his breathing steady. He used the tools as best he could: sparks from the torch, bursts from the scanner, sudden slams of his repair kit into exposed joints, but every strike cost him. A blow to his ribs made him stagger. A shove sent him sprawling against the floor. Still, he rose again. The alien mother watched in shock. She had expected the human to be crushed instantly, but instead he kept finding ways to resist, refusing to let them past him. His body trembled with exhaustion, yet his eyes held the same fire as before. One enforcer grabbed Daniel's arm, twisting it behind his back. Pain flared white-hot, but Daniel kicked back hard, slamming his boot into the alien's knee joint. The enforcer roared, stumbling, and Daniel broke free. His chest heaved, his vision blurred, but he stayed upright. The crowd whispered now, their fear slowly turning into something else. They saw a single man, unarmed, holding off four armored enforcers with nothing but tools and determination. Whispers grew into murmurs, murmurs into voices. Someone shouted, "Let him go." Another called, "He's right, it's only a child." The leader spun toward the crowd, fury flashing in his eyes. Silence. None of you matter. This is syndicate business. But the words no longer carried the same weight. The crowd did not scatter this time. They pressed closer, though still cautious, their eyes fixed on Daniel. His struggle was awakening something they had buried long ago: the belief that the syndicate could be defied. Daniel's body ached. His breaths came ragged, but he stood once more between the enforcers and the mother. "I told you," he gasped, his voice steady despite the pain. "You won't touch her." The mother felt tears on her cheeks, but they were no longer only of fear. She whispered to her daughter, "Do you see him? He stands, even when he falls. He stands for us." The little girl nodded, her small voice trembling with wonder. "He is brave." The leader of the enforcers clenched his fists. He had underestimated the human. He had thought the fight would be quick, simple. Instead, the human had turned the corridor into a battleground of courage. Before he could give another order, a deep rumble shook the air. The docking gates at the far end of the corridor slid open. Heavy footsteps echoed, disciplined and precise. A squad of armored human officers marched in, their insignias shining under the flickering lights. Daniel sagged with relief, barely able to stay on his feet. The signal had worked. Help had come. The leader's eyes widened, his confidence cracking. For the first time, it was not Daniel who looked cornered. It was them. The struggle had shifted. The corridor erupted into movement as the human patrol squad entered. Their polished armor reflected the station lights, their boots striking the floor in perfect unison. The enforcers froze, caught between the human technician who had already proven himself and the incoming force that represented authority and experience. Daniel's body sagged with exhaustion. His arms trembled, his chest heaved, and every muscle ached. Yet he did not collapse entirely. He remained between the mother and her daughter, his stance stubborn, determined. His eyes followed the lead officer as he approached, nodding slightly in acknowledgement. Relief washed over him. The risk had been immense, and help had arrived just in time. The alien mother's face brightened, her silver blue skin almost glowing under the flickering lights. She held her daughter tighter, whispering softly, "It's all right now. They are here." The little girl peeked out from behind her mother's arms, eyes wide with wonder, still trembling from fear but beginning to feel the warmth of hope. The lead patrol officer, a tall human with a calm yet commanding presence, spoke in a firm voice. "Step back, civilians. This is under control now." His words carried authority, and even the enforcers hesitated. Daniel's breathing remained heavy, but he straightened slightly. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice rough but sincere. I couldn't let them take her." The officer glanced at him and gave a small nod. "You did the right thing. Stand down, all of you." His gaze shifted to the enforcers. "This is human territory. Interfering with a protected child is a violation. Surrender peacefully, or face consequences." The enforcers exchanged nervous looks. They had counted on fear and compliance, but the unexpected arrival of the patrol had shifted the balance. The leader snarled, but his bravado had weakened. The more humans they faced, the harder it would be to act without severe consequences. The mother bent slightly, hugging her daughter close, whispering words of comfort. The child clung to her mother, still small but slowly gaining courage from the strength of those around her. She had witnessed something extraordinary, an ordinary human risking everything for her safety, and now, more humans reinforcing that courage. Daniel stepped aside, gesturing for the mother and daughter to move toward safety. "Go ahead. I'll stay a moment longer," he said, still tense and alert. The patrol officer gave him a reassuring look. "We've got this now. You've done enough. Step back and let us handle it." Reluctantly, Daniel allowed himself to move, keeping one eye on the enforcers who hesitated under the patrol's presence. The corridor now held a tense calm, with every movement measured and watched. The enforcer leader, seeing that further resistance was futile, raised his hands in surrender. His remaining men followed suit. "This isn't over," he hissed, but there was no bite in his words anymore. They were forced to comply, to retreat under the watchful eyes of the human patrol. Daniel exhaled deeply. Pain lanced through his shoulder and ribs, but the adrenaline that had carried him this far began to fade, leaving only exhaustion and relief. The mother approached him, her eyes full of gratitude. She knelt slightly, holding her daughter close. I don't know how to thank you," she said. Daniel shook his head. "You don't have to. Just seeing her safe, that's enough." He looked at the little girl, who now clutched a small patch on her mother's sleeve, her face still pale but smiling faintly. "You'll be okay now," he added. The patrol officer turned to him again. "Your actions saved lives. You could have walked away, but you didn't. That kind of courage, it's what makes humans respected across the galaxy." The mother's eyes shimmered with emotion. "He risked himself for us," she said, more to her daughter than anyone else. "He is brave, braver than most I have ever met." The little girl reached out with a tiny hand, placing it gently on Daniel's arm. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice small but steady. Daniel knelt slightly to meet her gaze. "You don't need to thank me," he said softly. "Just promise me you'll grow up kind and strong. That's enough." The enforcers were now escorted away under the watchful patrol. The corridor, once filled with tension and fear, began to feel lighter. The humans had intervened, the child was safe, and the mother's hope returned. Daniel remained standing, battered but proud. He realized that courage was not about strength or weapons, but about refusing to ignore someone in need. That moment, that choice, had changed everything for a mother and her child and reminded him why humans were capable of extraordinary things. The patrol officers offered Daniel a hand to guide him toward safety. He allowed himself to be led, glancing back one last time at the mother and daughter. They waved softly, their smiles a quiet testament to hope and survival. In the quiet aftermath, the human had intervened. And in doing so, he had reminded the galaxy of the simple truth: standing for others, no matter the odds, was what made humans truly special. Days had passed since the tense confrontation in the corridors of Haven's Reach. The station, once filled with tension and uncertainty, had slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Traders shouted their offers, travelers hurried to catch ships, and the quiet hum of machines resumed. Yet, for the mother, her daughter, and Daniel, life had changed forever. The alien mother, named Lyra, and her daughter, Myra, had been given temporary quarters near the station's medical wing. They were safe under the watchful eyes of human patrol officers, who ensured that no syndicate agents could reach them. Lyra never left her daughter's side, though her fear had softened into cautious relief. Myra, once trembling at every sound, now clutched her mother's hand with a new sense of curiosity, peeking around corners and exploring the safe corners of the station. Daniel had returned to his small repair workshop, his tools scattered around him. His body ached from the fight, bruises marking his arms and shoulders, but he was proud of his choice. He had acted without thinking of consequences, guided only by the need to protect the innocent. And it had worked. That afternoon, Lyra approached Daniel's workshop, Myra peeking shyly from behind her. The mother carried a small bundle of gifts from her world's simple items, glowing faintly with alien craftsmanship, symbols of gratitude. She knelt slightly to meet Daniel's eyes. "I cannot find words to express what you did for us," she said softly. "You risked yourself when no one else would. You saved my daughter. You saved me." Daniel shook his head, a small smile on his bruised face. "I didn't do anything special. I just couldn't let harm come to her. That's all." Myra stepped forward, her small hand reaching for Daniel. "I want to be brave like you," she said, her voice earnest. "I want to help people too." Daniel crouched slightly to meet her gaze. "You already are brave," he said. "Being brave isn't just about fighting. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. You've already learned that just by holding on to your mother." Lyra watched the exchange, her heart full. She had expected fear and despair to dominate their lives after the encounter, but here was a human showing courage, kindness, and an example for her daughter. It reminded her that hope could exist even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Over the following days, Daniel taught Myra small lessons about machines, problem solving, and observation. She listened intently, fascinated by the human skill and ingenuity. Lyra assisted, learning alongside her daughter, and together, the three of them built a small bond that transcended species and worlds. As the station's lights flickered at night, Daniel sometimes stood outside, looking up at the stars. He thought about the encounter with the enforcers, the fear in the mother's eyes, and the hope in Myra's. He realized that courage was contagious. One small act of bravery could ripple outward, affecting lives in ways no one could measure. Lyra approached him quietly one evening, Myra sleeping safely beside her. "You changed more than just my daughter's life," she said softly. "You reminded the station, and perhaps the galaxy, that humans are special. Your courage, your choice to intervene, it matters." Daniel smiled, a quiet warmth spreading through him. "I only did what I had to do. But thank you. That means more than you know." For Myra, life would never be the same. She had seen what bravery looked like. She had experienced protection, kindness, and selflessness. The memory of the human who had risked himself for her safety would stay with her forever, guiding her as she grew. Lyra held her daughter close, whispering words of gratitude and hope. "We will remember this, always. And we will pass it on. The courage of one can inspire the courage of many." Daniel returned to his workshop, but now, every corner of Haven's Reach seemed brighter. Every sound of machinery, every footstep in the corridor, every whisper of conversation reminded him that even small choices could change the world. Humans were not the strongest or the fastest, but they had something no machine, no weapon, and no empire could ever replicate: the will to stand for what is right. The patrol officers checked in occasionally, nodding at Daniel in silent acknowledgement. The syndicate had retreated, unable to challenge the combination of courage, ingenuity, and organized support. Peace, at least for now, had returned to the station. As Myra waved goodbye to Daniel that morning, her small hand raised in a tentative salute, Daniel felt a swell of pride. The child he had helped protect would grow up understanding what it meant to be brave, to stand for others, and to believe in the goodness of life. The galaxy was vast, and danger would always be present, but in that moment, humanity's best qualities had been clear. Courage, kindness, and the refusal to ignore those in need, these were the qualities that made humans truly special. And in a quiet corner of Haven's Reach, a mother, her daughter, and a human smiled together, knowing that hope had survived.